Okay. So welcome, and thanks for all of you who felt inspired in a call to, and maybe even had plans change that that said initially you couldn't, and now you're here because there are no accidents, and that is my overriding belief that everything is in divine order. And just to give a little background on me, my name is Kim Fisk, and I have been on a journey, spiritual, personal development, um, for most of my adult life, whether I realized it or not. and and it culminated. Well, it's still culminating, but in the last couple of years, what's happened is I had written a book called "The Monster Under the Bed: Uncovering the Lie That Drives Us." And the thing that's about a year and a half ago it came out. And the thing that's calling me now is what's happening in the events in the world are so predictable based on what I talk about in my book. The Monster Under the Bed is basically, I talk about how our identity has evolved from childhood, like babyhood, all the way to where we are now based on fear, our survival brain, the old part, the primal lizard brain, some people call it, and how those messages throughout all of our life have resulted in our current identity for good and bad. Like our skills are based on maybe fight or flight energy, where maybe we felt it's a threat to our survival when we could be wrong. It's a threat to our ego when we're challenged in any way. It goes back to the it has no logical connection. That's why when we look around at what's happening, it doesn't make sense. It won't make sense. And how many times have I said things in the heat of a moment that I went, why did I say that? It doesn't make sense. Because when that part of our brain is running the show in the driver's seat, the logical, reasonable, rational part of our brain actually shuts down. It's really not your fault because you didn't have access to that part of your brain that's logical when you're in fight or flight mode. So when you're in fight or flight mode, and that, because there's no connection to the reality of what's happening, it's what's happening as you're perceiving it emotionally. So when these things happen and we see, clickbait headlines, or we see somebody, really feeling attacking to us, or a very attacking post, then that triggers it, absolutely triggers it. And if you'll take a breath and go, oh, maybe that explains it. So that's yeah, Jen?
The Facebook Live just ended. If you want to hit the
Okay.
go live button one more time, it must have just been
Okay.
a little internet.
Okay. And how long ago did it end? A long time?
Just like 30 seconds,
Okay.
15 maybe.
Okay, thanks for those. Well, if you're on Facebook, you're not hearing me. That was on Zoom. Thanks for being patient a minute and maybe process some of the things I just said per your experience. The people that will hear the call to maybe be on this kind of a call are people who already sense what I'm talking about at the soul level. Because, okay, hang on, I can't talk and type. So I have to put this back on Facebook. And so when you're processing that, and okay. All right. Come on, Facebook. Come on, Wi-Fi. You can do it. Okay, Jen, tell me when it's back on. Because it doesn't show it's back on yet for me. That it just says preview. Is it on?
Not yet.
Okay. Okay. So anyway, I'll let Facebook kind of come when they come, and I'll watch for it on my end to see if it's So what I'd like to actually do for those of you who got on Zoom, and I don't have Zoom up right now to see how many people are on, but I know it's recorded. And however I start anything like this, I would really like to start with a quieting time. Jen, am I on? Because you came back on my screen.
Not yet.
Okay. So I want to start with a quieting time. I want to get centered, and I want to have, just like that, the best tool we have to quiet down the that survival brain, the fear-based brain, the anxiety, that feeling of that feeling is to actually breathe and then actually shift to gratitude. So I'd like to start the call with just that premise, setting an intention for uh, why did you specifically want to have this conversation, and and centering, to just focus on some deep breaths as we just start, like moving out of our head and opening our heart. Thank you, God. Thank you, universe. Thank you, love, for being in us, through us, around us, and having our awareness be called to it. Thank you for calling us to the energy, the power that creates us all, that threads through us all, and has created worlds without end. We are all a part of that energy and that same love, pure love. Thank you. And just take some really deep breaths. Please pray in the way that feels right to you, realizing that there's maybe different ways of people's hearts that communicate it, and start with just being okay with how someone else might interpret prayer or meditation, realizing that we are all connected. And when one person hurts, we all hurt, because we are all of the same source. And as you're finding your breath, use your mind's eye, your imagination, basically, to put a bright light, like a sun, right in your chest. We're going to focus on the heart in this conversation. That's how this is how we can be safe. When we move to our head, our analytical brain, that's the one that's been wired through our ego and fear. But when we're focusing on our heart, so feel the light, see the light first in your heart area of your body. And as you breathe, actually breathe from the heart. Like, picture that heart expanding, opening, and flowing. It's your heart that's actually breathing you. You are not even in control. Our bodies are fearfully and wonderfully made. We are not in control. We can just learn how to speak its language. So, and then as you imagine the heart, actually think of it as like a fire hydrant. In the light that's emitting from your heart, gush it up into the top of your head, like it's going to just go through your heart all the way up through the top of your head, and then just float down over all the rest of you, all the way down to your feet, through the floor. Imagine that light. That is pure love. And that's what's at each of our core. That is who we are. That's why we're not happy, when we're not aligned to that part of us. So imagine just a few things, a few more times doing that. And then we'll come back and start the call. And you know what, Jen? I'm not going to worry about Facebook. They just can get on the call. They can just come on Zoom, because, yeah, okay. It keeps crashing on my end. Maybe it's on right now. I don't know, but it looks like it's crashed on my end. Okay. So if you're on Facebook still hearing this, come over to Zoom. The Zoom link is there. So, okay. So, hey, you guys, and thank you for taking this moment. Like, it's better to lay this foundational energy first before we attempt to move into discussions that can be dicey. And my biggest goal in this call is to actually, number one, provide a safe space for people to speak. And when you speak, imagine the person, the situation that you're speaking about. Imagine that those people have this heart as well, that mean well, that are connected to you and connected through love. You know, the ancient principle of love your enemies. Love your enemies. Do good to them that hurt you. Well, why would anyone say that? Why would I love my enemies? I've got a battle to fight. But see, when you love your enemy, the enemy feels it. And even more importantly, you shift, you change, your energy shifts, and your influence grows. So we want to have an influence for good. And so when you're, please be respectful, but please feel completely safe to say anything that you absolutely feel. Another one of my concerns in the world, it started back in the 2016 election, is there's so much polarization. You know it. I don't have to tell you, it's preaching to the choir. But what happens is that people feel dismissed. They feel labeled. They feel, and once I label you, then I don't listen to you anymore because I already know what you're going to say. So as much as you can, listen to understand. Watch for the triggers of your fear, survival, ego brain. Watch for them. They're going to show up. They show up with me every day. So it's not like you're immune to that, but notice the trigger for it. Breathe, come back to the heart, and listen to learn, listen to understand, because that's how we're actually going to change the world. That's how we're going to save ourselves. Honestly, I believe this is a wake-up call for all of us. So I don't really have any other agenda, or I don't have a structure, and I just want to leave it kind of an open mic. So those of you who are a little bit more outgoing and have something to share, or come with questions. I love the idea of having more questions than answers. What questions would you have? And the people I see on right now, let me look even closer. There's a good selection of, there's not all one side, left, right. I see both from what I know of some people. I don't know everything of everybody, but it's good. It's a good mix. So does anyone want to start with just a question or a comment or feedback about anything? I can keep talking, but I would love it if you would talk. Somebody would talk and get the ball rolling. Because it just takes that. And why did what was the impetus for coming on? And maybe you want to listen, and that's fine too.
I
Yeah.
think they can't unmute themselves. Hang on one second, guys. Let
Oh,
me.
okay.
It's set so that you can, but let me just see.
Okay.
Okay, somebody try now to unmute.
Okay. Thanks, Jen.
No problem. Or raise your hand. Let me see. Robin,
Is
I'm
there
going
a
to try
raised
to
hand
unmute.
thing? Is there a raised hand thing on this?
No, I just meant literally raise your hand, but let's
Oh,
see.
okay.
Let me unmute.
Hey, Deborah, can you unmute now?
Oh, Robin, I unmuted you.
Okay. Okay. Thank
Okay.
you. Can people hear me?
Yes, I hear you. I think we all can. Yep. Thank you.
So one of the things, as I told you, I'm coming here because I do want to come from love, and I do want to listen to understand, as hard as that is for me. But my question is, isn't there sometimes you're on the right side of history? Like, aren't there things that have happened in the past that are just wrong? And how do we, and how do we continue to look at some of the things that are happening with love? And of course, the person, it's like Hitler. How do I look at Hitler with love?
Mm.
How do I see any of the people who were on his team and supported what he was doing?
Mm-hmm.
How can I see them as right? And of course, I don't want to see things as right and wrong, but to me, sometimes there is being on the right side of history. So,
Such a great question. Thanks for jumping in with that one, man. That's a good one. Let's get right to it, right? So let's have some definitions, okay? Right and wrong. Let's see if we can shift it to, because yeah, in retrospect, we can all look and see what happened during that time frame and go, that was wrong. What if we moved right and wrong to aligned with love or not aligned with love? Okay, so and because Hitler, let's just use, and I'm not even claiming to be a World War II or a Nazi expert, but just from the first, blush, kind of, I think, for discussion's sake, Hitler wasn't born Hitler, right? Hitler was a baby that was unconditionally loved, perfect, worthy. He had parents. He was like your child. Picture your child in your mind. Okay? That was a Hitler once. Little Adolf was a little baby. That was incredible. That was a piece of God directly from heaven. That's who Adolf Hitler was. Okay? So, okay, now let's have the conversation. What happened? And you might know some people in our political world right now who you have maybe in that same category. And so if you guys can mute, if you've got noise in your background, that would be great. So think about it from that way, because Hitler wasn't born Hitler. The people who you perceive as evil today were not born that way. And at their essence, in their core, who they really, really, really are is pure love. So what happened? What happened to make that big of a shift from something pure love to something seemingly so evil? This is a really great question, Robin, because this is exactly why I want to have these conversations, is because I believe when people aren't heard and they're squelched and their viewpoints, they don't feel safe because of the labeling, the division, the media clickbait, the constant barrage. Like today. Okay. It's okay. We have such a barrage of things pulling our attention away from seeing people for who they really, really, really are at the core. And we just see the symptom. See all these things. Hitler was a symptom, not the problem. The people that we see that we maybe have huge issues with politically today, we have to step back. I did this in 2016. I had to step back and go, and I even do it even more today. How did we end up with this symptomatic result politically? See, it's easier to blame them and say, well, because that and Russia and that and blah, blah, blah. But you kind of go, wait, how did we end up in this situation where this is a symptomatic, this isn't the real problem. This is just, we want to just put a Band-Aid on cancer and call it good, right? Or deal with it from that level. Does that make sense, Robin? So far?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure because I believe everybody comes out as a blank slate, and I don't know what made Hitler Hitler. I don't know if it was circumstance. I don't know if it was brain wiring. You know, I don't know. But
But what's the answer either way? See, it's and
the answer to me is whenever there's a question and I look to what's the more loving outcome, what's the more loving position,
Mhm.
I think that's the right way.
And then how does that impact your response
To what?
to whatever? Let's think of a specific situation. Can you bring one up where you go, you were triggered to judge, to blame, to get distracted by an outside thing, and then you went, wait, how would love? I mean, these are examples we use every day in our families, you guys. These are not just in the political world. These are skills and philosophies and foundational things that will serve you if you can shift to this in every part of your life, because it's going to ruin our lives. It's not just ruining our country. In fact, there's where that's a symptom of what's really happening in our lives, is what's happening in our country. It's just easier to see it in someone else than in ourselves. So how
One of
do,
the, no,
go ahead. Go ahead.
sorry, one of the things I was thinking of, because someone brought this up this morning at my church virtual happy hour, was that, she has some friends who are, she's a more progressive person and has friends who are very conservative, and they came and stayed with her, and they got along, but they couldn't talk about politics. And she was saying, my friend is a good person, even though we disagree and we just can't talk about politics. And somebody else said, well, I have a hard time defining somebody as a good person if they believe, if they're supporting all these bad things.
Right.
But one of the things, so I'm reading, or I'm actually listening to White Fragility, and in her book she talks about how it's sort of a false, or not a helpful dichotomy to say you're either racist or you're good, because you can be somebody who supports racism or the structural racism within the country, but still be a good person. And if you start saying, well, because you support this and you don't agree with me on this, you're bad, then the person shuts down and you're not able to talk to them about it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's where I kind of think that, you may believe, and I certainly agree that there is a right and a wrong, and I will, fight for what I believe is right. But to define the person who disagrees with you as wrong and bad is not necessarily a way to have any kind of
That's a good distinction.
dialogue.
Yeah, that's a good distinction. So let me ask you this. Thank you for chiming in, by the way. What percentage do you think, just from your heart answer, like what percentage of people would honestly identify themselves as, let's say, a racist? Do you think it's don't look at necessarily your outward judgment, but like inside their heart, what percentage of the population of America, let's just say the United States, would identify themselves as a racist, do you think?
Probably less than 10%.
Yeah, probably it's really small, right? So do you think that people are more the label, like, okay, so here is the standard kind of a triggering post. If you don't believe you're a racist, you are one and you're part of the problem. Or if you don't believe in white privilege, you are a racist. Like those kind of blanket statements, right? So now the person who maybe doesn't really understand, align, or agree, like pick one of those things inside that person at this moment to white privilege. They don't understand that, or they don't, whatever. It doesn't make sense to them right now in their understanding that that is true. Now they're going, well, but wait, I don't align with that, but I'm not a racist. So do you see how the definitions trap us, and these are the conversation sticky points, right? Like, and I think that's true with a lot of, like, if, let's say someone says, well, you know what? I do have a hard time with maybe interracial marriage, right? Maybe they're from the like my parents, my grandparents, like we were raised in that kind of culture, right? That was not, in fact, it was illegal in most states up until just whatever day it was, you know, when it was the anniversary of the Loving. And those are deeply ingrained beliefs, or it was modeled to them when they were children. And let's say this person today that's maybe my age-ish, you know, 40s, 50s, somewhere in there, who grew up in the cultures of those parents and grandparents like mine. But they're not necessarily ready to shift to the entire conversation yet. Maybe they're just like, wow, I had this happen the other day with someone. She said to me, well, I would, and she's a little bit older than I am, and she goes, well, I would have a hard time with interracial marriage because the Black gene is dominant, and it could show up, you know, 3 or 4 generations later. And then I don't think that's, this is, she's a very, very, very good person. I love this person, okay? But this was her comment to me. She goes, but it would be like, it's not my choice to make that decision for my 3rd or 4th generation later to come, that a Black baby could just show up, when it was my decision to marry a Black person. Now, those of us listening to that, right? This is the point of this conversation. This is the point of these kinds of interactions, because I want people to understand that when she said it, I said, okay, I just did not jump on her. I heard it, but see, we can always hear it in other people. We can see everybody else's fault so much faster, right? And so I just listened, and I go, well, okay, what about that? So what if they have a Black baby 3rd or 4th generations later? And she goes, well, see, she had to process this. If I had shut her down and said, oh my gosh, I can't believe you just said that. How racist of you. Don't you hear it? White privilege, you know what I mean? Like, this is why we need to change the conversations from a right, wrong, good, bad, you're to let people, because we'll fix ourselves, you guys. Our souls will, it'll be, how many times do we read something and go, oh my gosh, I've read that book 10 times, or I've heard that sermon, I've read that scripture, I've whatever, and I finally got it, right? Like, that's the work of the soul. But we get in the way, and we're labeling so much that everyone's egos and fear-based survival brains are triggered, and now we're still just talking about the muck and the mire of he said, she said, and you're wrong, I'm right. Whereas it's not agreeing with them. I didn't say, oh yeah, I completely agree with that. I didn't. I just said, that's interesting. But guess what she did? She heard it when she was able to say it. You know what I mean? And maybe she didn't even fully make the switch yet. Maybe she still is processing it. And maybe she's not. But you know what? It's not my job to make sure she knows how she's wrong, or that she's wrong, or okay. Anyway, anyone have anything about that, about anything else we've said? I don't want to keep talking. I want you guys to talk.
Kim?
Yeah.
Kim?
Yeah.
That's kind of my question. If 10% of people admit to being racist,
Well, that was an arbitrary.
Do they really?
That was an arbitrary number.
Okay. Yeah, we're just exactly. But I'm just giving that as the example.
Okay.
How many more don't think they are, but really don't understand what racism is? And your example was, was right in there. How many people really don't realize? They may say, I'm not racist.
Right. Oh yes, absolutely.
They don't really understand what that means.
Right.
Exactly.
How
do we bring that to people's attention?
Okay, well,
not
let's,
to their attention, but to their knowledge, you
yeah,
know?
no, let's play this out. This is a really good, thank you for chiming in, and thank you for bringing that out. How would you do it?
You know, I don't encounter a lot of people that I know and that I'm in my family, because my daughter's married to a biracial man, her first marriage, and I have 3 biracial grandchildren.
Okay.
I'm Mexican, so, you know, we've got a lot of multicultural in our family.
Right.
And, but on Facebook, that's a whole other, you know, a whole other thing. Reading a lot of the comments and a lot of the, you could just see it. I mean, it just oozes, you
Okay.
know, some of
So
the
let's use
comments
that.
that are
Let's
made.
use that as an example, Alice. So
Mhm.
let's see, you scroll by, you've a friend's post is they are using Facebook as a way to um, expound on what they're feeling today, right? About it, their
Mhm.
opinion today. And you see it and it really triggers you. Like it is like so blatantly, in your opinion,
Right.
racist, right?
Right.
What do you do?
I have learned not to comment, even to the point of agreeing with them, or not agreeing with them, but acknowledging their comment, but then putting my, you know, my 2 cents in, because sometimes, I mean, they're Facebook friends, but they're Facebook friends because they're on sales sites or
Right.
different sites. I don't know them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So some of the responses can be so like,
Mhm.
you know, name calling, and, you know, so it kind of teaches you or makes you think, I don't want to respond to that.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, I feel, you know, and there is a side that says, if you don't try to make it better, then you're part of the problem,
Okay.
right?
Good.
So how do you do that without, you know, like coming across, you know, like you're wagging your finger at somebody?
Well, and these are really, really good. Thank you. So if you saw that, your choices are to keep scrolling. But if you feel a
Right.
desire to really want to influence or impact that person, because maybe it is someone you know. Maybe it's not just in a Facebook acquaintance that you don't really care about. Maybe it's your third cousin that you know you've had some interaction with over your life, or it's a neighbor you used to live by, somebody you went to school with. Let's say it's somebody you really
Mhm.
and that really stands out to you, and your heart, that's the impetus to help them see it, is worthy.
Mhm.
It's a good intent, right? It's a good intent. I don't doubt many people's intent, because love is not a good feeling. Love is a choice of how you hear things and how you see. What I see in you is somebody that's really struggling with something, and this isn't who they are. Their opinion does not define them. Their opinion today, how many of us have changed opinions about stuff in our life? How many of us have had strong feelings about something? I was an iPhone fanatic, then I switched to Android, and then the iPhone Android wars started on Facebook, right? You can see those going, ah, right? I was a Christian, then I was a Mormon, then I was not, like, it's all this stuff. And your heart says, but if you only just knew and could understand it the way I see it, right? So the heart has some impact there to call you, but what you do with that is it switches, it's a slippery slope to, if you really want to impact them, showing them where they're wrong, especially in text form. This also happens just texting people. I've learned the hard way too. Don't
Yeah.
text people any kind of anything that's not just unicorns and rainbows, really, you know, because they don't hear your voice, they don't know you love them, all that. I've
Right.
made that mistake so many times. So, but here's what I would suggest maybe you think about doing is, in the movie Avatar. How many of you have seen the movie Avatar? It's I think, one of the best movies of this example. It's I see you. It doesn't mean I agree with you. It doesn't mean that you've got some really messed up stuff going on in there right now. But you know what's going to further embed this person deeper into the thing you don't want them to have? Is by you pointing it out to them. Because you're going to trigger their survival brain. Their ego is going to get snagged. They can't be wrong. Being wrong is like death to your ego. It's like, I can't be wrong. And people will ruin their entire lives. They'll divorce. They'll ruin every relationship with their children. They'll ruin their health. They'll go to their dying deathbed just to be right. And they're not willing, that part of them is not willing to see it. So I would suggest you just say, wow, that's an interesting perspective, or something that's authentic. Don't blow smoke. And if you can't be authentic, don't say anything. You know what I mean? Because people can feel that coming a mile. But I really want to, in fact, I'm hoping that at the end of this, I'm going to ask everybody, if you're willing and feeling inclined, to actually set a new example and model different behavior in your posts and in your comments on Facebook that are going to reflect the energy and the unity. Not that they're right. See, because the chatter is going to tell you, pride, ego is going to tell you, Kim, if you don't argue, if you don't set them straight, if you don't point out where they're wrong, you're complicit. See, this is language of fear. This is language of fear is at the root of all the hate, anger, all of that. It's all fear. And so I would just suggest you, number one, model how to respond to people. In fact, if you can't say anything, if someone comes attacking on your post, which sometimes happens to me, I don't delete it, because I want to model how to respond to the people that are hurting. Because see, hurt people. Don't take it personal. It's not about you. It's about their anxiety ridden inside of themselves. That's how I see it. And that helps me have compassion for them and not get into the ego of proving them wrong, because that never works. Anyway, thank you though, Alice. Anything else about that?
No, thank you. Maybe there's some other input.
Yeah.
Am I the only one feeling?
No, I'm sure not. I'm sure not. And I don't have to be right about what I'm saying either, you guys. Like, please don't. This is just my, as I'm working on this every day inside myself, it's hard. I mean, I feel the pull. The pull is strong, and it's deep, deep, deep wiring that we have evolved from, but that's not who we really are. That's my take. Who else has a comment?
Yeah. I would just say that I don't think it's necessary not to call the person out or to point out where you disagree with them. I think it's not good to say you're wrong or you're bad or you're deplorable, right, or whatever it might be, but to say maybe ask a question and say,
yeah, good.
Say, maybe can you see how these particular words, and for me as a person of color or somebody, or even if you're just, a progressive who agrees in,
Right.
in that perspective, to say, can you see how this specific thing that you said might be, might seem harmful to somebody else, or
harmful.
something.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, something like that. And again, I'm just going to plug, I think this, just because I'm reading it now, but White Fragility has some really great examples of how she, as a corporate trainer on issues of diversity and inclusion, will bring up things and will, not try to make people feel like, she called it like the fragile white ego or whatever, to make, you don't have to stay silent to make people feel like they're not wrong, but or not doing something that's not helpful, But
I have that book on order. I saw so many people recommending it the last week.
Yeah,
so I'm anxious to read it. Yeah.
So it's a great book for, especially, if you're interested in this topic on her
Absolutely.
perspective is really helpful.
Absolutely. Good. Anyone else have a question? Anything that's troubling you in what's going on that you can't? It's cognitive dissonance, you guys. That's what we're all feeling. It's like, wait, something's not, something doesn't make sense. Something is, it's the turmoil is so palpable. So anybody have anything that you want to talk about?
I do, Kim.
Okay.
So I've listened to everybody and I love you all. And I've learned so very, very much from both Kim and Jamel about living above the line. And thank you, Jamel, for being there, even though you don't have your office set up and no hoodie. I don't know who you are. I've heard you say, Deborah, and I understand it's very much people of color. I felt a little twang, I don't know what you want to call it, but white is a color. And I think we all feel that. I think we all feel that there's some racist comments, however you want to phrase it nowadays, that the white people are bad and the black people are bad and the Indians are bad. And I'd like to go back to, I think it was maybe Alice or Robin who talked about Hitler. I really have struggles with looking at anything about politics right now because people are so consumed with politics and who's right and who's wrong. I agree that with Kim that Hitler was born just like we were to be good. We all were. It's a learned behavior. It's something that we learn that comes up. I think of Kim Jong-un and his sister right now, who are, his sister is thinking of raging war on South Korea, and that's their own color. I don't understand a lot of things that are going on around me. I live in Washington State, so any of you that know what's going on up here, or if you're up here, bless us all, because there's some very radical people that are taking the death of George, which was not right at all, but to a whole extreme, in my opinion. I don't understand it. So I was messaging with Kim this morning when I get things like that, and I live in a very small, tiny town, which Jamil has told me many times doesn't matter in my other side of life. But I ask the question when people tell me that Trump is this and Biden is that and Black and Lives Matter, and they do. It's true. And oppression is bad and all of these things are bad. But I asked the question, and I think that's why, Kim, you invited me to this today. I ask the question when people say that's bad, I ask why. That's interesting. Why do you say that?
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, they've read it in the media, they've seen it on the news, they've read a magazine, but there's no heartfelt why. It's because all of these things are coming in and telling me that I shouldn't like Jamel, and I shouldn't like Kim because she's got a green shirt on today, and I shouldn't like, and I shouldn't like, and I shouldn't like, and I should like this. And it's difficult, but I find when I ask why, sincerely ask why, and I have an example right now. I live in a small resort town. We are in the middle of Washington State, and we are on phase 1.5 that our governor pulled from I don't know where, because in the beginning it was 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we have a business that is going to go under. It's a slide water park. They have put very safe things in to be able to open up, and they were told no. The same person that told me that was a bad idea to open up the swimming pool water park, which is where you slide down and you get back out and you walk up and slide back down. Your kids would love it. Jamel, come up. You're invited. I got a room for you. You too, Kim. You're not that far away. Wanted to know when our homeowners association pools were going to open. And I had to ask why. So I'd like to know from this group, when you ask why, not you're wrong, not you're right, but why do you think like that? And help me understand so I too can live above the line and understand where you're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that made any sense at all, but we're not born like that. It's a learned behavior. And I told you, Kim, not too long ago, I spent 3.5 hours driving home from the west side of Washington to my home in central Washington and listened to the monster trucks. And it really struck me then is ask why. Listen to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Not that you're right or wrong, but listen to understand.
So Pam, I love that. And I think, why do you feel that way? Why are you upset about this? Tell me more. Tell me more. Really letting people get it out, which is one of the reasons of this call. I wanted people to be able to just be free and safe. However, now the question I would ask back to you is, what if what they say you don't agree with or doesn't make sense? Now what?
Well, I had that actual thing happen last night and into this morning. And it regarded the
Mm-hmm.
pools, which have 504 properties that share these two pools versus a water park that has safety precautions in. And all I could say is I understand how you feel, and I would hope that you would take your best interest at heart and not visit those places if you don't feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't say she was wrong. I didn't say,
Mm-hmm.
because she has valid feelings,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not my feelings. I feel very bad that this particular place has got 150 people in a small town of 4,000 that are unemployed and won't be until
Mm-hmm.
God knows when. I hope God knows anyway. But I couldn't say you're wrong. I could only say,
Mm-hmm.
and again, this is from multiple trainings that I'm was blessed to get for free, is to live above the line. You're not wrong. You get to have your thoughts, but help me understand why you have them. So I can only say, you need to do what feels right for you. Now, when you get to things like political, I think part of our political issue is that we have been raised to have politicians run the country, and we don't right now. So it's very disheartening for a lot of people, whether it's right or wrong or indifferent. I think our growing up monsters have said, and I'm going to use an example, and somebody on this screen might laugh or might not. I grew up, I learned this a year ago March. I grew up thinking that direct sales people were horrible and they were just trying to sell me stuff and they weren't really doing anything, because that's what my parents knew.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Kirby guy came to the door and the Fuller Brush guy came to the door and they were just trying to sell me stuff, when really in my heart I'm just trying to help people.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think it's a growing up
And Pam,
learned behavior.
And Pam, are there direct selling people who are just out selling stuff and that don't really care about the people?
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah. So this is the other thing. It's not all or nothing. And in politics right now, please, 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 let me get this in here right now while you segued to that. And that is the people that in fact, everybody right now, let's just do this exercise. This will be fun. I'm preparing you to this will be fun. Think of somebody you really, really, really don't like, either in politics or in your job or in your family. All right. And then, do a little tilt in your psyche and go, what is a good thing about that person? Or what has that person done that I can be authentically grateful for? Now, your ego is going to resist that question and you're going to fight it. And it's like, no, this can't be any. I did this once, my husband and I, after 10 years of marriage, we were done. We filed for divorce. It was over. And I remember the still small voice one night. I did. In fact, it's a miracle. I don't even know how I even heard it because I was done. And the voice said, are you really going to, without judgment, this voice has no judgment, you guys. It's pure, pure, pure love. I'm going to say it in a way that I don't even can't say it in the way that doesn't have some judgment in it, but it didn't feel judgy at all. I heard it and it said, are you really going to do this, Kim? Now it was my choice to do it. But the voice said, are you really going to do this? And it gave me, it stopped me in my tracks. And I could have went, no, I'm going to do it. Shut up. But I said, I thought and I felt and I went to the heart and I go, whatever. So this is the crux of every relationship. This is the skill. This is the shift that we need to make inside of ourselves. This is not our world's problem. The problem in the world exists because it exists in us. We are what needs the healing. We are in our spirit. This is the call of the soul to us to say, listen, think what's best. St. Francis's prayer. I'm doing a thing all the month of June. Please read it every day. You know, make me an instrument. Where there is injury, let me only sow pardon. Let me only see light where there's darkness. Let me bring the light, right? Like, these are not feel good things. These are not things that make you all warm and fuzzy. These are things that make you go, what? Shut up. Don't make me do that. That's the ego part of you, right? And that's the part to run to the roar and go, okay, do I want to be right? Or do I want healing inside myself? Do I want to see things? Am I willing to see things differently? And thinking the best of everyone, even the Hitlers and the Trumps and the Bidens and the Pelosi's and the whatever and the blah, 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 and the Joe Fisks when I hated him. Am I willing to see it differently? And if you can really honestly, and if you can't do it yet, then don't. Like, you're not. And you're still a great person that still is invaluably, unconditionally loved. It just means it's just not quite ready yet. But be cognizant of the call. And I think the fact that you guys are on this call tonight, or you're watching the playback, you are of that fertile soil. The parable of the sower talks about the certain ground that's ready for certain seeds. And some of you, I know, you're like tired. Your souls are tired because it's soul sucking. So look at that as the call to the soul. It's the call to, okay, shh, come back. It's all good. I got it under control, number one. That's another foundational thing. It's like, don't think we're in charge of any of this, because we're really not. Everything's been perfectly, unfolding for billions and billions of years and multiverses. And it's not, we are like a speck of dust, right? In the big scheme of things. We don't even pump our own blood or breathe our own air. It's not, we don't grow fingernails. We don't grow nose hair. Like, we don't control this. We are just hopefully learning and growing in this summer camp experience called life. We get to have these experiences. That's my perspective. Okay, who else wants to share? Anybody have a feedback to Pam? Anything that you want to say regarding her?
I just had a question. I don't know if it's Pam or Kim or Jamal that can answer it, but what is living above the line?
Hey, Jamil, are you around? Can you pop in? And your name's been mentioned a few times here. Are you available? Thank you. We take vernacular for granted sometimes in people that have read, it's 15 Habits of Conscious Leadership or something. It's one of those steps. So I don't know if Jamil's around, but it's, people that live above the line. I don't know. Pam, you say it. You describe it as you were meaning it. Pam?
I truly think that Jamil is the one that can describe living above the line the best.
I know, but I don't know really.
Jamil, are you going to pop in?
He might be going to the bathroom or something.
No, he's there. I see his smiling face.
Oh, you do? Okay.
I'm here.
All right.
Hello. So living above the line, as I know it, is doing many of the things that Kim's talking about. it's been open. It's been curious. Is living from a high state of curiosity. Um, it's it is having what we might call an abundance mindset. It is living from a place of love and understanding. It is the direct opposite of being below the line, where we might point fingers, we might blame, we might shame, we may self-defecate. Living above the line allows us to act in a state that's consistent with being in flow with God.
Mhm. So how do you,
Pam, did I do okay?
You did, Jamel, and I can't thank you enough for all of the days that I spent with you on a Zoom meeting. I have taken that theory and taught it to my grandkids and my kids, because I truly believe that there's a place for all of us above the line, and when we dip below into the blame and the judgment and the name calling and the that's mine, not yours, you can't have it space,
It's 7 o'clock.
we cave in on ourselves.
Deborah yes, thank you, Pam. Thank you, Jamil. Deborah, did that answer your question, or do you have any other questions about how that relates to anything?
No, I didn't know.
Okay.
She referred to it a couple times and I didn't know exactly what it meant. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. So, yeah, it's an hour in. Well, we started a little bit later, but I am grateful that you guys came on. And does anyone have any other, if you need to go, but I don't want to cut anyone off that maybe came to share something or that has something to say. Jamil, I'm actually, your face is on my screen. So I'm, I go ahead. Were you going to say something anyway?
Yeah, I mean, I want to thank you for doing this and thank everyone that's on. You know, I've been really trying to find my words and my space, and this has helped me immensely. So I appreciate you. Kim's been a friend and a mentor of mine for quite some time now. And, you know, we're talking about above the line. You know, I would say the most important thing about above the line is consciousness and being conscious. And I think a lot of what we are experiencing now, in the past and probably in the future, is when we move outside of that consciousness, or we're not even aware that it's there to begin with. And and it makes it very difficult. It moves out of empathy, moves out of it moves out of structure, becomes very rigid. We've spoken a lot about right and wrong, and it moves into the ego, which makes it even harder. Kim, you just gave us that assignment. Think of someone who we don't like very much and try to think of one thing that we like about them. Very hard to do, as we are, you know, outside of consciousness and really move in with that ego of mine. I think for me, it's been it's been an interesting time, as to where do I fit individually. What's my voice, and sort of what's my place, Kim? I could say that. And how does it all tie together with some of my fundamental belief systems?
Can you answer some of those questions for us? Can you give us, like, where are you right now with this thing? Like Jamil, not, you know, like internally inside you. It's just us.
What does that mean? Just Jamil. What does that mean?
No, I mean, take off the hat of, business leader, take off the hat of everything. Take off your father hat, take off every hat and just go, Jamil, like inside me, where today, you're not going to be held to it, right? Because we all have evolved. So where are you with the whole race issue right now? For you, speak for you only. If you don't mind, and you don't have to, but I'm just asking.
Mm-hmm. I would say I've lived my life in the middle. This call is a perfect example. If you look at the faces on this screen and then you look at my face, this is where my life has been.
Mm-hmm.
In the middle.
Surrounded by women.
And I love it. Beautiful women at that. Beautiful women.
Are you saying, Jamel, that your life has been where you've been loved all your life?
Yes.
Because I've only personally met you a few times, but my heart connected with you immediately. And it had nothing to do with race, nothing to do with business, nothing to do with anything other than my heart connected to your heart. Mm-hmm. So if you feel loved being in this Zoom room, I feel like I've done something right.
Always. Well, I don't know everyone, but I definitely feel loved.
When you said you feel like you're in the middle of both races.
Yeah. So, well, I don't really know. I don't really know what the question is. I know what my experiences have been. Mm-hmm. And I know based off of my experiences, my individual experiences is kind of how I see the world. And I think that's probably true for most people. And so my experiences have given me an outlook to where I wrote a journal, which will probably be turned into a book. It's called The Two Parts of Me, to where I'm fully aware and acutely aware of racism, of institutional racism, of structural racism, of biases, of challenges with inclusion, and challenges of opportunity because of the color of one's skin. So, and there's many experiences to where I could say that is absolutely true for me. Mm-hmm. I grew up in mostly an Asian and white neighborhood. My elementary school, I think that there was 7 Black kids. My high school was about the same. And then I went to an all-white Christian liberal arts university. And I'm in a company now that is mostly white. So I have, when I say I'm in the middle, it's because I understand that because of some of the challenges, historically speaking, that is now present today. I have 4 brothers, 2 older, 2 younger. All 4 of them have felonies, and I don't. I'm in the middle. I understand that I grew up on a welfare system. That is what I know dearly. I know the days to look forward to getting the checks. And I know what it feels like to have and be in a community that certainly feels affected from being in a climate and a landscape to where they may not be seen or heard or starting way behind a proverbial starting line. I also know what it feels like to have a whole lot of money and not be poor and to be on the wealthy side. I understand it. I'm in the middle, and economically speaking, I'm in the middle, taxation speaking. I'm in the middle from understanding the left and the right. So for me, it's um, I'm also in the middle with my training, Kim, if I could just say it like that. My training, even before I started in the profession that I am, but my training in athletics. I was an all-state running back here in California. I went on to get a football scholarship, as you know. And in athletics, my coaches will say we could be in the middle of a game, and it's clear that the referees are blowing too many whistles against us because we're in the opposing team's court and or field, right? They call it home court advantage. And what my coaches trained us to do is don't worry about the referees, go win the damn game, right? And so that's how I've lived my life. So in some instances, our society has been that referee for people that look like me, but I've been trained, go win the game anyway. And same thing in my business. I've been trained to, and I fully believe this. I fully believe that we're in a climate that we don't have to be victims. We don't have to be subservient. We can rise up and we can have upwards mobility. And so I'm in the middle with truly understanding the difficulties for some people, but also knowing for a fact that if that desire is there, we can go and do amazing things, and there's nothing that's holding us back more so than our mindsets. So I'm in the middle. So I stay in a very real place for me, which I guess after speaking it out right now can aptly be called the middle.
That's good. That's really good. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm anticipating having more of these discussion times, and I'm hoping that you guys have found value. My parting words at this point would be to be mindful. Just be mindful when you feel triggered, and the triggers are there. In fact, just notice them, shift to observer of the trigger instead of a liner with it. And you're going to be an aligner of the trigger for a little bit until you realize what's happened. You're going to go, oh crap, I'm in the middle of, Armageddon here on this post, or I'm in the middle of a fight with my spouse or my kids, or you're going to be triggered first. But shift to observer of it as quickly as you can without judgment, and then kind of laugh, go, whoa, that's crazy. Look at how much I was in that. I was in the throes of it. My survival brain was fully functioning and in the driver's seat. And then shift, breathe, get access to your soul, open the heart, focus on the heart, focus on thinking of those people that you are angry with, picturing them as a baby. That helps me so much, you guys, because no one can hate a baby, and all of these people were babies. These people were all babies and you were a baby, and you were unconditionally loved and worthy and perfect. You are a complete piece of God at your deepest core essence. So keep aligning to that. And it's a rewiring. My book, I'll just give a little shameless plug here. The Monster Under the Bed, Uncovering the Lie That Drives Us. It's a book. It's an audiobook. Jamil, talk about your books real quick, because I want to give you I love your books as well. And you've talked about a new one that I didn't even know about. What's the other books?
Well, the latest one is 12 shifts. The first shift in the 12 shifts really comes from you in your teaching. You just talked about it. I talked about consciousness and awareness. But I think it's a really good book. It talks about basically 8 years ago when I started on the journey of self-discovery, what that journey has been like from then until now, and the 12 biggest shifts that has happened that took me from basically an unfulfilling life to an extremely fulfilled life in every measurable category. And the other one is a book that really I wrote for my brothers and my kids, and that's a book on financial wellness and well-being and how to basically, have extremely healthy finances. So that one's called The Richest Man in Direct Sales.
Are both on Amazon? now?
Yeah.
Are they both available? Okay.
They look like this.
Oh, good. Good, good,
Both
good.
shifts. Here's The Richest Man, direct sales.
Okay,
Mhm.
good. And in my book, actually, do you mind if I tell them who your alias is in my book, the story I talk about? Is that okay?
Of course, go for it.
I think everybody would know now if they read. This is Jonathan. My story has Jamil's story about how the police situation in his experience, this one experience anyway, I'm sure he's had many, but in my book it's Jonathan, and it's Jamil's story. It's very compelling, and I'll just leave you a teaser of that. But here's the last thing I want to say before we go. I know you guys are hanging in there. Is seek ye first to understand and think. The responsibility is in the hearer, the ears of the hearer. How are you hearing things? Who's the guy that wrote the 4 agreements? Paul Coelho, but I don't think that's it. Anyway, the 4 agreements. Who is that, you guys? Come on.
Miguel
Who?
Ruiz.
Yes, thank you. Yes. Take nothing personal. This is not anything. When you hear somebody and you feel the trigger, shift as quickly as you can to go, you know what? They mean well. The hearer is the one that takes offense. You don't have to take offense. Okay. Taking offense is a choice. When you've taken offense, you'll be triggered and then make a different choice. So try to do that. When you're out and about on your social medias, go, how can I bring peace and light, pardon? How can I bring love to this comment, to this person? And if you can't, don't do anything. Because even in your well intention, they won't, you've got to take responsibility how they will hear it. And they will not hear it in the kind, intent, loving feeling, especially in text, in a written form. They're not going to hear it because they're an offense ready to happen as well. Everyone's an offense ready to happen. I'm a big honking button. Now go ahead. I dare you, push my button. That's how everyone is walking around right now. So be conscious of that and be loving and kind. And that's my prayer, my goal, because we need more of us doing that. And I feel so much better when I get wrapped up in all the muck and the mire. Have I really done anything about them? No. And I feel like crap. So I love making myself feel better by staying in my love space of seeing them and hearing things from that place. That's just my suggestion. So thanks for being on. We'll do this again if you want. I'm so thankful and humbled that you guys took your time to be here. And please know I love you. And if ever you want a conversation, a safe conversation, you can always reach out to me. Always. I would love to hear from you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, you guys.